Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink, I have in sample form. Camera, not today. DeAtramentis Sepia Brown, or Sepia. There seems to be some debate about that. But as you might be able to tell, there's something slightly different about this brown. It's reddish, or sometimes even looks almost purplish. So yeah, there's that. All the tests were done in this Nemosine Singularity with a 0.6 stub. This is probably the smallest stub I have, and it tends to be a bit on the dry side. So yep. Chromatography, kind of interesting. As you can see down at the bottom, you can still distinctly see where the drops were put. Dark gray goes into sort of a lighter gray, then into sort of that purpley brown thing going on, and then right at the edge there's this like bright jolly red. So yeah, interesting. Paper test, top down in density, Clairefontaine 90 grams per square meter. As you can see, there is some shading. It took 15 seconds to dry, which I really can't explain because, as I said, this is a fairly slightly dry nib, and it's a fairly small nib. It's the smallest stub, probably the smallest stub I have. No bleed, feathering, or spread. I said the shading sort of, to me, highlights the thin areas of the ink. It does have a little bit of a woolly texture, which is something that we've seen in previous tests with DeAtramentis inks. Water test is pretty good. It's pretty dark, pretty there, pretty clear. No explosions. No bleed, feather, spread, no sheen. Next is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter. Go home, camera, you're drunk. Jesus. Anyways, 13 seconds to dry, which again seems really long for such a small stub and a fairly dry one. Again, we get some shading, but still, I feel like it kind of, like if you look at the bottom of the F and flow, I feel like it really just highlights the thin areas of the ink. But yeah, great water test again. What is that? It's dark, it's clear, it didn't explode, didn't feather. No bleed, feather, spread. Next is Tomoe River Paper, where it took 17 seconds to dry, which again just kind of baffles me. I don't know what was going on with this ink. It was having long dry times. Decent shading, but I feel like it was fairly thin, except in the wettest areas. Again, no bleed, feather, spread, no sheen. Some show-through potential, particularly maybe if you were using a broader or wetter nib, because it can be a bit dark as an ink. I feel like this really isn't a bad water test for Tomoe River. It loves to let ink just slide away once you add more water, but that's pretty there. It's pretty clear. It's not super dark, but if you had to, you could recover that without too much trouble. Next is 20-pound copier paper, where I feel like it got a lot lighter, and yeah, this wasn't a great showing. 3 seconds to dry. The pen started having trouble keeping up with the absorbency of the paper, or I guess the combination of the pen and the ink. It looks thin. As you can see, there's definite extreme wooliness. There's some feathering. There's a good degree of spread, which I'll try and show here. Like if you look at the line width, you'll see that it got much broader. The shading is essentially gone. I said really don't recommend the pen, paper, and ink combo. Water test isn't terrible, though I think it's kind of interesting that we start to see some of that red like we saw in the chromatography. But what's at the center is fairly there and fairly dark. It did feather and spread a bit at the edges, and that's more bleed than I like seeing in such a small stub and a generally dry stub. I was not terribly comfortable with that. Next is Mead Notebook Paper. where again I feel like it got kind of light, and well, I think some of the lightness came from there not really being any shading anymore. 3.5 seconds to dry. We still get some feathering. We still definitely get that woolly effect. There's bleed, feather, and spread. Decent water test. It did expand a bit. It did get a bit feathery, but it's fairly dark, fairly there. There's a good bit of like near bleed through, you know, but it's not quite on the other side. Like, and it's only here at the edge, which makes me think it was a problem with the pressing process of the paper, not really the ink. And last is Moleskine Notebook Paper. And this is the new Moleskine Notebook Paper that it was like winning the lottery, because for some reason it was well behaved. Yeah, you get shading. There's no bleed, feather, or spread. Long dry times. Yeah, I'm really... Moleskine paper drives me crazy because of how inconsistent it is. Because sometimes you get good paper like this, and sometimes you get utterly terrible paper, and you ought to know what you're getting when you buy it. But anyways, water test isn't bad. It's fairly there. It's fairly dark. It did expand a little, but not much. And if you've ever heard me talk about laid side of the paper or unlaid side, so this is the unlaid side, and here you might be able to see that there's some spread and some feathering, but on the laid side you're not really going to see that. And that's just which side of the paper during the pressing process was face up or face down. So yeah, it affects how the paper actually reacts because of like how the fibers were pressed together. I'll explain that better some other time. Anyways, for your consideration from the Triple N Network, DeAtramentis Sepia Brown. It's an interesting brown. It's a reddish brown, almost a purpley brown. Not always the most well behaved, but yeah, if you have experience with it, please leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear about it. So if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching. Bye.